This is Iris Martinez, an interviewer for the Iowa State University Special Collections and University Archives Voices of a Pandemic Oral History Project. Today is July 13th, 2021. I am interviewing Joanne Camacho from Ames, Iowa. Please know, Joanne, that this interview will be placed in the Iowa State University Library and shared with Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there's anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. If there's something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. So because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record your consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 5 questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 2 questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. Voces wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation at the Parks Library at Iowa State University. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to Voces. So question number 1 is, do you give Voces consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Parks Library?
Yes.
Okay. Do you grant Voces copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree to allow us to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes.
Okay. And we have many questions. We have filled out the pre-interview form that we have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server. Before we send it to the Parks Library, we would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or your family members, so that would not be a part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Parks Library. So question number 4 is, do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at the Parks Library?
Sure.
Question number 5. On occasion, Voices receives requests from journalists who wish to contact our interviewee subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone number or email with journalists?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And so we're just going to jump right into the questions. Let's start off by you telling me a little bit about your COVID experience.
A little bit. We went through quite some hard times with COVID. When I first learned about it, it would have been around before Thanksgiving. And before
What year?
Thanksgiving, oh, 2018 actually. No, wait, 2019,
Okay.
November,
Okay.
before Thanksgiving. And one of my daughters had been, she was only maybe 3.5 at the time, got really sick with, I don't know what it was. She was coughing, lost her voice, feverish, and I took her into Ames hospital here, which would have been McFarland hospital, and in the ER. I didn't know. I thought maybe it was like something because winter hit and maybe, the flu or cold or something. And it was rapidly increasing quickly. It was like within the hours she started showing symptoms, and then um, within a few more hours, it was like I felt that she was just getting too sick too fast, and that's why we ended up going to the hospital. And they tested her, and they had told me that they thought that maybe she had some sign of diabetes, and according to, they were trying to figure out what was going on with her, why she was so sick so fast. So then they told us that at the end to not worry, that it wasn't diabetes, that it was called coronavirus or corona something. Head is what they kept saying. I was like, head, like, so I'm thinking like upper respiratory. Um, okay, so then at the time, they all they said is just to keep her, hydrated, and they gave me instructions on what to do at home, but that was really it. They didn't give me nothing else. Then later I got sick, really, really sick, and I went to the hospital with a high fever. I don't usually go to the hospital for a high fever.
Mm-hmm.
I knew something was really, really wrong. And so I went to the hospital and I said, maybe, I don't know. I don't know what I expected of the hospital. But then what they told me is that I probably had flu-like symptoms. They didn't test me. They just told me flu-like symptoms. And I accepted it. And I told my kid, I need some time off of work. I need you to write me up something because I can't go to work like this. They don't want me in the office. That would have been still, again, a little bit, a few days after Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And then another daughter of mine got really sick actually the day of Thanksgiving. We were celebrating Thanksgiving and she was on the couch lying, just really sick. Um, I don't remember if it was actually Thanksgiving or Christmas, but you get where I'm coming from. It's
Yeah.
around the holidays. And
Still early
so
before
then,
they even said anything about
yeah, so early before we heard anything about COVID. Come March, again, I came out with a high fever
it. Yeah.
out of the blue, and I'm like, what's the, I'm like, again, the flu, and the same symptoms, but this time I had lost my taste and smell, and I did not, I just thought that's what it is to get sick, and I went to the hospital again, and they did test me, and they told me I had influenza A or influenza A, um, and then days later, I was still trying to recover. I asked them for another excuse for work, and they gave me the excuse. But then I went back to work and I was still very sick. I was still very sick. And um, March 18th is when the news came out that there was something out there that was called COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
And they explained the symptoms. And to me, I felt that that's what I had probably even had
Yeah.
back in November with things and during the time of Thanksgiving because I got so sick. And then March again, going back to March, I'm sick again. So they said that sometimes you can have the flu twice in a season. And I said, okay, well, that was my, like, I accepted it. But then they come up with that there was COVID. And I'm like, that's what I had. Exactly all those symptoms that they were saying is what I had. Um, but they didn't know much about it, I guess, at the
Yeah.
hospitals.
Yeah. It was still early.
I lost my job due to it because I felt that I was being looked at like I had an illness that had to do with that COVID-19 that was being talked about on in the internet or on the news.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was laid off. Actually, I was fired and then laid off of work. No, first I was laid off and then they fired me. So I had to go and start investigating what I was going to do because everything was shutting down. There was no jobs, there was nothing. I had to pay rent.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what the plan was for the rest of the next couple of months with no job, knowing that I was looked at like in a prejudice way, like, okay, first she's minority, second she's sick, she's coughing, she's in the office coughing over and over. It was I was trying to recover from when I had it in November. I was not recovered yet, and
And
then I had it in March again.
were they give you any leniency, like you're still sick,
No,
you can go home?
yeah, they would tell me to go home because I could tell they wanted me to go home, but they were not giving me any leniency. They were talking about dismissing me.
Like they weren't paying you for those missed days or anything?
They had said they were going to pay me,
Yeah.
but this was like all verbal. This was not like a note or something. No. So I wanted to trust, but I didn't trust. I said, "Okay, I'm going to trust you."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I go home. Later they're like, "You got to turn in your timesheet." How was I supposed to turn my timesheet and when this was like a actual paper? It wasn't digital. Nothing was I wasn't signing in online or anything. It was I had to have a form filled out. I'm like, do you want me to drop it off? No, no, don't do that because you're sick and the virus and everything. They were being overly protective of themselves against me.
Yeah.
So then a few days later, I think I fell into some type of mental breakdown,
Mm-hmm.
and I really do feel that it had to do with COVID because it wasn't normal. I wish I could maybe talk about it, but I don't want to, I guess. Because I mean, like the details are rough for me to talk about, and but I am going to tell you that during that time that I was really sick with the high fever, I was I felt like I was hallucinating at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that um I can't say that I started kind of roaming the streets with my children, feeling like we were not safe,
Mm-hmm.
and I got on the bus, took them with me. We were sick. I was really, really sick. Um, and I just didn't know what had like why I was reacting this way. But I knew that something was not right, and I don't feel that I had a lot of understanding or help really because I didn't have a lot of family here in Ames.
You were a single mother,
But
correct?
single parent, yes, in Ames, and it became where that same day where I started kind of just roaming the streets. I don't know what you can call that, if it was a mental breakdown and I could not think well. But I got on the bus, finally made it back home somehow with the assistance of the bus drivers. And I had one of my daughters, I called her and I told her I needed your dad to come pick me up from Des Moines. He lives in Grimes, or Des Moines, Grimes. And I said, I need help. I don't know what's going on, why I'm feeling this way. I was not hallucinating, but my
Your
mind
temperature was
was
like taking
not
over.
something, I guess, because it wasn't normal. I would never do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so she did send her dad to go pick me up. Um, I'm sorry, I didn't make it home. I actually make it to a Dunkin' Donuts, and he picks us up. It was freezing cold outside, and it he drove us home, dropped us off, and from there, I mean, I had to go back in home in my to my home, and I didn't want to for some reason. Kind of felt like it was infected in some way. It was all these mental things that I could not grasp to understand why I was thinking this way.
Mm-hmm.
But I get back home and I start kind of feeling safer again, and the kids started feeling safe because they were going through this with me. They didn't understand what was going on. Also, they weren't very they weren't 100% healthy. They were going through the beginning of the illness
Yeah.
or the flu or the coronavirus, whatever it was. So, I settled down at home and started to feel more safe, and I continued to, just try to recover from what we were going through. Um, I had no job, I had no money at that time. Nothing, we had nothing. And I guess my strength was my kids. They're the ones who were keeping me going.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And then, yeah, I mean, we recovered, but it did take quite some time. It took us like 8 weeks, 8 long weeks of just being not just sick for 8 weeks, but the first 2 weeks we were sick, and then um, I had to try to take care of them when I was getting better, and they were really sick also with the flu, and I lost my job. Then I had to start investigating how we were going to get unemployment or some type of assistance, how I was going to pay the rent. The apartment complex where I used to live and work for, they just started looking at me like I had probably lost my mind or had gone maybe crazy,
Mm-hmm.
which now I understand that those were some type of symptoms that had to do with COVID and the flu, or when you even have the flu. So to me, for a long time, I felt that they did look at me like I was going crazy. But now I understand that I wasn't. It was just part of the illness.
Yeah.
Eh,
It's everybody
I,
different.
I went, yeah, it does, I guess, because yeah, it does. And 6 months later, uh, I applied for that unemployment, or within that 6 months after we were ill and I had lost my job, I applied for the unemployment. I fell into the category of being able to receive unemployment and the some type of act. I don't know what they call it, but um, that was nice. But then the company who I worked for fought it, tried to fight it, and they left me with no income until that I could prove and the court could decide that they were going to continue to pay me unemployment.
Okay.
And so that was a long 3 months with no money, no food again. Um, and it was just mentally exhausting.
Of course.
I felt that I was just very I don't know. I don't know what to think of that time. Um, I had lost hope, and when finally everything kicked in, where unemployment was accepted again, and I won the court hearing, then money started coming in, and I kind of feel that that money helped mainly with depression.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the money was spent not the right way. It was very not well spent. That's all I can say.
Okay.
Because of the depression that I had been going through, I guess. My depression had snuck up on me 100 times more than what I usually deal with on a daily basis and medicated. Um, so yeah, that was it.
So, how did like the shutdowns impact you and your children or your family members that maybe don't live near you?
I had no contact with nobody. My mother had left to Florida for some reason at that time. So I had nobody really. I had one daughter that would come around and she would come and kind of give me strength by telling me that it's going to be okay. She'd check up on me, but then she would leave. And the way it impacted us is I was so afraid. I was just full of fear to go to a store.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go in there and I would act like a crazy person. I feel like I look back and I remember saying, I am acting like a crazy person. I'm running in and running out, and I'm grabbing things and I'm running. Like I felt not not well mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And it affected us because the money that was coming in through unemployment was a good amount of money that was coming in. And so since I was so much full of fear, instead of going to the grocery stores to buy food for me to cook for the children at home, I would order food through DoorDash or through, just show up and pick it up, order it beforehand and then pick it up. And I did the math and I think I spent in less than 6 months $6,000 on food
Wow.
just to be delivered. And that's a lot of money, I feel, in less than 6 months to spend for food
Mm.
just to get by on a daily basis. And it affected us more, I think, because I would tell the kids, let's get up and go. And we'd get in the car and we would drive around town, or we would drive all the way to Des Moines and then drive back to Ames with no reason. It was just a drive, maybe to just feel normal,
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
to pretend that we were going to go do something maybe, but really we couldn't because there was nothing open. There was no family to go be able to see. It was a pretend kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is you don't pretend to do things unless you're in like survival. And I think that's where I was is trying to survive. I was trying to keep things normal for the kids. And when maybe at the end I felt that my kids might be looking at me like I was crazy. Or if somebody knew this, they would think I'm crazy.
It sounds like you did your best though, in such crazy circumstances that this world has never seen, at least in our history and time.
Yeah. I think I did do my best. We survived. It was that's what I was doing. I was surviving. I was doing things for them.
Do you feel like
Whatever it is that I mhm.
do you feel like you came out stronger from the COVID now that like things are being lifted, restrictions are being lifted, and all that?
Oh yeah, very strong, but then also having to keep that memory tucked back behind me is hard. Just talking about it, it's hard for me.
Of course, yeah.
I I think we went through a lot, me and my kids, that it makes me feel like I tucked that memory back there. And if it comes to have to try to pop out, it's going to make me remember things that I don't want to remember.
Hmm.
And talking about it, it makes me feel okay, but I don't like it. I just don't like remembering.
Yeah. I can,
Plus because I felt alone. Felt very alone.
yeah,
Even though I had my kids, I felt very alone, and that's not a good feeling.
yeah. That was a theme for sure during the pandemic. Like, isolation was a huge thing during the lockdowns
Yeah.
thing.
And mentally, I have you know, some um, I suffer from depression. I suffer from some other things, and so having to go through that when you have those illnesses or diseases, you it's very hard. It's very
Mhm.
hard.
Yeah, I bet. So, how did you feel about all the restrictions besides the lockdowns, like about wearing masks and everything? Were you okay with that, or how did you feel about that?
I didn't like the whole mask thing. I still don't like it. I suffer from asthma, and so it's really, or I don't know what it is. I get very anxious, so it even makes it even harder. So having to have that on my face makes me more anxious. So it's causing more anxiety problems. Having to accept it is not something that I only do it just because it's forced, but I don't like it. I never accepted it. I would put it on my face just because we had to. Um,
And you work in the healthcare department, right? So you guys are still wearing masks every day, correct?
we're still wearing masks every day,
Yeah.
and it makes my anxiety. I don't like to show that I have anxiety. First, second, I am treating my anxiety, but then for it to still I feel that it shows. And I don't like people to know that I have an- anx- anxious behavior. I don't like it. And so having to have that mask on me immediately, I swear I could say, "Hi, my name is anxiety," instead of, "Hi, come into our clinic. I can help you."
Yeah.
And so I suffer from that. I don't like to show. I hide those kind of things very well, and I do a really good job when I don't have things like that making me feel insecure.
Hmm. Yeah. So the mask is like you hear different answers for the masks for sure. So that's a new answer I've heard. So how did
Mm.
you? What concerns or questions about healthcare emerged as a result of COVID for you and your family?
Tell me that again.
What kind of healthcare questions emerged during COVID? Like new healthcare questions or concerns that you had?
Not really nothing, because it just to me reminds me of like the flu, just a stronger version of it. So I already know, except that mental part, that mental state.
Yeah.
That one, I've never really asked. I've not been treated yet. I know I need to maybe go to therapy to try to find out, or to maybe like help me understand why I felt like I was going crazy.
Hmm.
It's still a question I have, but I haven't asked. I haven't been treated for it. I haven't reached out to anybody about it. Just something I keep saying, later I'll deal with it. Later I want to know a professional answer to why I felt the way that I was feeling.
Yeah. So did it change any way that you guys were accessing healthcare?
Yeah, we lost our therapy. At that time we had just started therapy, and my kids, I had them start also therapy, and COVID hit. We lost therapy services, um, psychiatric help, medication,
Hmm.
even my medication for depression. I just felt like I couldn't call anybody, I couldn't reach out to anybody to get my medication, or, we were on the route to trying to help the kids heal from their anxiety and things that were happening in our life way before COVID, and all that stopped. Everything stopped. So I remember I had older pills that were probably expired in my medicine cabinet, and I started reaching out for those that I had maybe one point not taken, but I just tend not to throw away pills. So I started reaching out for that. Um, Medically, we were all suffering, and I really feel that it was chronic depression. I really do feel it was chronic mood swings from one of my children. Um, and another one that was going through a lot of depression also because of COVID.
Hmm. So how did
But
the
I didn't have anybody to reach out to.
yeah, because everything was shut
We
down.
dealt with it by ourselves. We suffered.
Yeah. So how did the kids take like the school changes?
They were okay with it. Of course, kids, they don't care if they go to school sometimes, I think, or they do. Um, so mine were like more of a, well, thank goodness there's no school. But the change dramatically showed in their grades in this last year.
Hmm.
I don't know what happened, why they went from regular maybe grades to like straight Fs. It's been an impact. I know it has to do with COVID.
Of course, yeah. So how did you feel about the getting the vaccines?
I was okay with it. I got my vaccines.
Hmm.
I haven't had the kids have their vaccines. Um, but I say as long as I'm protected, then I'm the breadwinner. So if I'm protected, then it's just it's been hard to get them vaccinated right now because I live in Ames, work in Des Moines. So time hasn't really, uh, I haven't had time. That's all I can say with that. But they are not vaccinated. I am, and to me, my I just accepted to get the vaccine. I have nothing against it. I really am not educated on it, so I just kind of go with the flow when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah. So let's talk about some politics. How do you feel politics affected how COVID had been handled? Or if you have an opinion on it.
Mm, I don't really have an opinion on it.
Okay, that's okay. So we pretty much touched on everything that I wanted to talk to you about. Um, is there anything else you would like to share with me about your experience with COVID-19 that I haven't asked you about?
Mm, Not really. I think this is the first time really ever talking